What would you do if you handed in your resignation, only to wake up the next morning and find out your dangerously powerful boss just bought the very roof over your head? This isn't a simple corporate game. This is what happens when you try to walk away from the mafia. Olivia Jenkins was not a woman who blended into the background. At a solid size 18, with a wardrobe of impeccably tailored, jewel-toned pencil skirts and a presence that demanded respect, she was the undisputed queen of the executive floor at Russo Logistics. For 3 years, she had been the gatekeeper, the schedule master, and the problem solver for the CEO, Darius Russo. But Russo Logistics was a phantom. A pristine, glittering skyscraper in downtown Chicago that served as a brilliantly constructed front for the Russo crime family. Olivia knew. She had never seen a body, never witnessed a hit, and never handled an illegal weapon. But she wasn't stupid. She saw the men in cheap suits and cauliflower ears who bypassed security to take the private elevator. She noticed how the shipping manifests occasionally had gaps that no one was allowed to question. More importantly, she felt the terrifying electric aura that clung to Darius Russo like a second skin. Darius was a man carved from marble and ruthlessness. He rarely raised his voice, yet grown men sweated through their designer shirts when he simply looked at them. Everyone feared him. Everyone. Except Olivia. She was the only person who dared to tell him his tie was crooked, or that he needed to eat his lunch before his 3 o'clock meeting. She assumed he kept her around because her hyper-competence was useful, and because her soft, curvy figure and grounded demeanor made her invisible to the dangerous women and lethal men he usually associated with. She was wrong. She wasn't invisible to Darius. She was the only thing he actually saw. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday in late October. Olivia had been woken up at 3 a.m. by a frantic call from one of Darius's associates, demanding she wire a massive, unrecorded sum to an offshore account to clear a shipping blockade. The sheer illegality of the request, coupled with the veiled threat in the caller's voice, snapped something inside her. The anxiety she had been swallowing for 3 years finally boiled over. She was a secretary, not a mob accomplice. She wanted a normal life. She wanted to go on dates without wondering if the man sitting across from her was secretly terrified of her boss. At 9 a.m. sharp, Olivia walked into Darius's sprawling corner office. The room smelled of expensive leather, bergamot, and rain against the floor-to-ceiling windows. Darius was standing by the glass, a tumbler of black coffee in his hand, looking out over the city he practically owned. "You're in early, Olivia," he said, not turning around. His voice was a low, gravelly baritone that always made a traitorous shiver run down her spine. "I need to speak with you, Mr. Russo," she said, her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart. He turned, his dark eyes instantly locking onto hers. They raked over her emerald green dress, lingering for a fraction of a second on the curve of her hips before snapping back to her face. "Darius. I've told you to call me Darius when we're alone." "Mr. Russo," she repeated firmly, stepping forward and placing a crisp, white envelope on his massive mahogany desk. "This is my formal 2 weeks' notice. I'm resigning." Silence descended on the room. It was absolute, suffocating, and heavy. Darius didn't look at the envelope. He just stared at her, his jaw ticking once. "Excuse me?" he said softly. The softness was the most dangerous part. "I'm leaving," Olivia said, crossing her arms over her chest defensively. "I've organized the transition files. I'll spend the next 2 weeks training my replacement, assuming human resources can find someone quickly. If not, I have a detailed manual prepared. Darius slowly set his coffee down. He walked around the desk with the predatory grace of a keyed panther. He stopped mere inches from her, forcing Olivia to tilt her head up to maintain eye contact. The heat radiating off him was immense. "Are you unhappy with your salary?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I'll double it." "It's not about the money. Are you overworked? Tell me who is bothering you. I will have them removed." The way he said removed made Olivia's stomach drop. "No one is bothering me. I can't do this anymore." The 3 a.m. calls, the strange men in the lobby, the stress. "I want a normal job, Darius. I want a normal life." Darius leaned in, his face so close she could feel the faint brush of his breath against her cheek. "You don't belong in a normal life, Olivia. You belong here." "I don't," she fired back, finding her courage. "I am a secretary. You can replace me in a day." A dark, unrecognizable effusion flashed in his eyes. "I will not accept this resignation." "It's not a request," Olivia said, stepping back to break his magnetic pull. "It's a notification. 2 weeks, Mr. Russo. And then I'm gone." She turned on her heel and marched out of the office, her pulse roaring in her ears. She had done it. She had stood up to the boss of the Chicago underworld and walked away. For the rest of the day, Darius didn't speak a word to her. He didn't call her into his office, didn't ask for his schedule. When 5 p.m. struck, Olivia packed her bag and left, feeling a dizzying mix of absolute triumph and profound grief. She thought she had won her freedom. She had no idea she had just triggered a war. For the next 10 days, the atmosphere at Russo Logistics was a suffocating vacuum. Darius treated Olivia with a chilling, professional detachment. He didn't argue. He didn't threaten. He simply existed as an ice-cold monolith, accepting the replacement candidates HR brought in and dismissing them just as quickly. Olivia threw herself into her exit strategy. She updated her resume, applied to 3 prominent law firms, and started packing up the small, sentimental items on her desk. Every evening, she retreated to her sanctuary, a spacious, pre-war apartment in a worn but charming brick building at 412 West Oak Street. It wasn't luxurious, but the rent was stabilized. The vintage crown molding was beautiful, and her kindly septuagenarian landlord, Arthur Henderson, always fixed the radiator when she asked. It was her safe haven. On day 11 of her notice period, Olivia arrived home to find a pristine, thick white envelope taped to her front door. It lacked postage. It had been hand-delivered. Frowning, she carried it inside, dropped her keys on the counter, and tore it open. It was a notice from a property management company she had never heard of, Apex Holdings. Dear Tenant, this letter serves as official notification that the property located at 412 West Oak Street has been acquired by Apex Holdings, LLC. Effective immediately, all current month-to-month leases are subject to review. Due to extensive building-wide renovations scheduled to begin next week, your rent will be increased by 300%. If you cannot accommodate the new terms, consider this your 14-day notice to vacate. Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. A 300% increase? Eviction in 14 days? That was entirely illegal. She grabbed her phone and dialed Arthur Henderson's number. It rang and rang until a disconnected tone sounded. Panic clawed at her throat. She couldn't afford a massive rent hike, and trying to find a new apartment in Chicago while simultaneously hunting for a new job was a financial death sentence. At the bottom of the letter, a single sentence was bolded. To discuss lease modifications or relocation assistance, tenants must report in person to the Apex Holdings leasing office at 8 p.m. tonight. An address was listed. A very exclusive high-end address in the Gold Coast district. Olivia spent the next 2 hours pacing her living room, furiously drafting legal arguments in her head. She was a woman who knew her rights. She wasn't going to let some faceless corporate monolith bully her out of her home just because they wanted to flip the building for tech bros. She changed out of her work clothes and into a pair of sharp, black, wide-leg trousers and a crimson blouse that clung perfectly to her curves, arming herself with confidence. At 7:45 p.m., she marched up to the address. It wasn't a standard office building. It was a private luxury high-rise. The concierge silently checked her name and swiped a key card, sending her straight to the penthouse. When the elevator doors parted, Olivia stepped into a massive, dimly lit room overlooking Lake Michigan. The space was hyper-modern, all dark steel, black leather, and glass. But there were no leasing agents. There was no desk. There was only Darius Russo, sitting in a leather armchair, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. Olivia stopped dead in her tracks. Her briefcase suddenly felt like lead in her hand. "What is this?" she breathed. Darius took a slow sip of his drink, his eyes drinking her in, hungry and unapologetic. "Hello, Olivia. Please sit." You own Apex Holdings," she said, the horrifying realization washing over her. She connected the dots in a matter of seconds. "You bought my apartment building." "I did," he confirmed smoothly, setting his glass down. "To what? To evict me? Because I quit?" Her voice rose, a mix of outrage and disbelief echoing in the vast penthouse. "Are you out of your mind, Darius? You bought an entire residential building just to enact petty revenge on a secretary." Darius stood up, the lazy, relaxed posture vanishing. He closed the distance between them in 3 long strides. "Petty revenge? You think this is a game, Olivia? You're raising my rent by 300%. You're forcing me out onto the street." "I'm not forcing you onto the street," he growled, stopping right in front of her. "I'm forcing you to stay right where I can see you." "You can't do this," she yelled, shoving a hand against his solid chest, though it was like trying to push a brick wall. "I'm leaving the company. You can't control my private life." Darius reached up, his large, warm hand wrapping around her wrist, not tight enough to hurt, but firm enough to hold her in place. "You're not leaving the company, and you're not leaving that apartment. Do you know why I bought that building today, Olivia? It wasn't to punish you. It was to save your damn life." Olivia froze, her anger momentarily derailed by the raw intensity in his voice. "What are you talking about?" Darius released her wrist and ran a hand through his dark hair, looking genuinely stressed for the first time since she had met him. "When you handed in your notice, you removed yourself from my immediate protection. You thought you were just quitting a job. You didn't realize that Victor Costello's men have been watching you for a month." The name sent a chill down her spine. Victor Costello. He was the head of a rival syndicate, a man known for his brutal, merciless tactics. "Why would they watch me?" Olivia whispered. "Because they know you are my weakness," Darius said, the confession hanging in the air between them, heavy and irrefutable. "They know you run my life. They know I trust you more than my own blood. Yesterday, my security caught 2 of Costello's scouts trying to bypass the locks on your building's service entrance. Your old landlord had 0 security. Anyone could walk right up to your door." Olivia stepped back, her legs suddenly trembling. So you bought the building?" "I bought the building," Darius said, his eyes fierce. I fired the management, installed bulletproof glass on the lower levels, and put 4 of my best men on rotation in the lobby, disguised as concierges. The rent hike notice? A legal loophole to get the rest of the tenants to voluntarily vacate over the next month so I can secure the entire perimeter. But you aren't paying a dime. You are staying in your apartment, and you are returning to your desk on Monday. Because if Costello thinks you are no longer under my wing, he will snatch you off the street just to get to me. Olivia's mind spun. You're insane. You're holding me hostage under the guise of protecting me. Darius stepped into her space again, his hand coming up to gently cup her jaw, his thumb brushing against her cheekbone. The touch was startlingly tender compared to the terrifying reality of his words. I am keeping you alive, Mia Cara, he murmured, his gaze dropping to her lips. You tried to run. I simply removed the exits. Now let's discuss your new contract. Monday morning arrived with the biting chill of a Chicago wind sweeping off Lake Michigan. Olivia Jenkins stepped out of the newly reinforced glass doors of 412 West Oak Street. True to Darius's terrifying promise, a broad-shouldered man in a tailored suit, who introduced himself as Hayes, was waiting by a sleek, black Lincoln Navigator. Her regular morning commute on the L train was officially a thing of the past. When she walked onto the executive floor of Russo Logistics, the atmosphere had fundamentally shifted. The staff, who usually offered her polite, casual greetings, now practically parted like the Red Sea. They had seen the Navigator pull up. They had seen Hayes escort her to the private elevator. The rumors were already churning. Olivia ignored them. She smoothed the skirt of her custom-tailored burgundy wrap dress, a garment that perfectly hugged her thick thighs and accentuated the plush, soft curve of her hips and generous bust, and marched straight into Darius's office without knocking. He was already at his desk, speaking rapid-fire Italian into his phone. When he saw her, he abruptly hung up. His dark eyes swept over her body, carrying a heat that made the breath catch in her throat. He didn't hide his hunger anymore. The professional veil had been incinerated the moment he bought her apartment building. You're 5 minutes late, Darius noted, though there was no reprimand in his tone. Only raw, possessive satisfaction. My armed escort insisted on taking a detour down Michigan Avenue to ensure we weren't being followed, Olivia shot back, dropping her designer tote onto her desk in the adjoining annex. And if we are going to establish my new contract, we need to set ground rules. I am your employee, Darius, not your prisoner. Darius stood, walking slowly to her desk and leaning his knuckles on the edge of the mahogany. You are whatever I need you to be to keep you breathing. Costello is escalating. 2 of his lieutenants were spotted near O'Hare International Airport last night, asking questions about our incoming freight. He's looking for a weakness. Olivia swallowed hard, the reality of the mob war sinking her teeth into her. But Olivia was a woman of logic and numbers. Fear was useless. Action was power. She sat down, booted up her dual monitors, and pulled up the encrypted logistics ledgers. If Victor Costello was suddenly bold enough to send scouts to my apartment, and now his men are poking around O'Hare, he isn't just guessing, Darius. He has inside information, Olivia said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Darius's jaw tightened. My men are loyal. I pay them exceptionally well to guarantee it. Loyalty can be bought, but fear is cheaper, Olivia countered. Look at this. She spun her monitor around. For the last 3 years, I've managed the scheduling for every inbound shipment. I know the blind spots. I know the exact 15-minute window during the shift changes at the South Side docks, where security is negligible. Yesterday, while I was supposedly resigning, I ran an audit. 3 shipments routed through the Southside terminal last month had delayed intake logs. Minor delays. 10 minutes here, 12 minutes there. Someone on the inside is holding the gates open for Costello's men to skim your shipments, and they are using that same inside knowledge to track your personal movements. And mine. Darius's eyes widened slightly. He leaned over her, his broad chest brushing against her shoulder, his intoxicating scent of bergamot and danger wrapping around her. He stared at the screen, absorbing the data only her brilliant, analytical mind could have pieced together. "Who authorized these specific gate schedules?" he asked, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "Gregory Thorne," Olivia said, naming the head of operations. "He's been with your father since before you took over, but he recently bought a $3 million vacation home in Aspen. I saw the wire transfer request cross my desk last week and thought it was strange for a man on his salary." Darius slowly stood up, a terrifying, predatory calm washing over his features. "Gregory." Olivia looked up at him, her heart pounding. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to plug the leak," Darius said softly. He looked down at Olivia, his expression softening into something devastatingly tender. He reached out, his knuckles brushing lightly against the soft flesh of her cheek. "You tried to quit because you thought you were just a secretary. You just found a rat that my entire security division missed for months. You aren't just an employee, Olivia. You are the queen on my board." "Darius, pack your things," he ordered softly. "We have a dinner reservation tonight at Alinea. Wear something breathtaking. If Costello's rat is watching, we are going to give him a show. We are going to make Gregory believe you are the key to bringing me down, and then we are going to spring the trap." The private dining room at Alinea in Lincoln Park was a masterpiece of modern luxury, but Olivia couldn't taste the intricate molecular gastronomy placed in front of her. She was wearing a breathtaking, off-the-shoulder black velvet gown that clung to every soft, plush roll and curve of her body, leaving her collarbones bare. Darius had barely taken his eyes off her chest and mouth all evening. But this wasn't a date. It was bait. Darius had deliberately leaked his itinerary to Gregory, ensuring the head of operations knew the boss was dining in a secluded room with his supposed weakness. The plan was to draw Costello's men out, catch them in the act, and force them to confess Gregory's treason on tape to justify the retaliation to the Underworld Commission. "Breathe, Mia Cara," Darius murmured, reaching across the table to cover her trembling hand with his massive, scarred one. "My men have the restaurant surrounded. Hayes is at the kitchen door. Garrett is posing as the sommelier. You are perfectly safe." "I've never been the bait before," Olivia whispered, gripping his hand tightly. "I'm an administrative professional, Darius. I type 80 words a minute. I don't do mob shootouts." Darius smirked, lifting her hand and pressing a scorching kiss to her knuckles. "You are doing beautifully, and you look magnificent. You have no idea what it does to a man to see a woman with your curves wrapped in velvet, sitting at my table, knowing you belong to me." A flush crept up Olivia's neck. "I don't belong to you. You just bought my lease." Before Darius could formulate a retort, the heavy mahogany door of the private dining room clicked open. It wasn't the waiter. It was a man in a waiter's uniform, but his eyes were entirely wrong. Dead, cold, and entirely focused on Olivia. He drew a suppressed handgun from beneath his serving apron. Time seemed to fracture. Olivia didn't scream. Her logistical brain took over. She threw her weight backward, kicking the heavy dining table upward with her thick, powerful legs. The solid oak table flipped, shattering crystal glasses and sending expensive plates crashing to the floor, creating a perfect wooden barricade between them and the door. Thwip, thwip. 2 bullets embedded themselves into the underside of the table, just as Darius tackled Olivia to the carpeted floor. His heavy, muscular body covered her completely, shielding her as he drew his own weapon from his shoulder holster. "Garrett!" Darius roared. The door burst completely open. Gunfire erupted in the hallway, loud and deafening. Olivia clamped her hands over her ears, burying her face into Darius's chest. The smell of cordite filled the room, replacing the aroma of truffle and roasted pheasant. It lasted only 10 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. "Clear!" a voice shouted. It was Hayes. Darius didn't move immediately. He stayed positioned over Olivia, his hands frantically running over her arms, her waist, her hips, checking for blood. "Are you hit? Olivia, look at me. Are you hurt?" She opened her eyes, gasping for breath. "I'm okay. I'm okay." Darius exhaled a shaky breath, pressing his forehead against hers. "You flipped a 300-pound table." "I have excellent core strength," she panted, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Darius let out a dark, breathless laugh. He pulled her up off the floor, keeping one arm securely locked around her thick waist. In the hallway, Costello's hitman was pinned to the ground by Garrett, bleeding from a shoulder wound. Darius stepped over the wreckage, his demeanor transforming instantly from a terrified lover to a merciless king. He looked down at the bleeding hitman. "You work for Costello, and Gregory let you through the perimeter." The man spat blood onto the carpet. "Costello sends his regards." "Tell Victor," Darius said, his voice absolute ice, "that his rat is dead, and if he ever comes within a mile of the woman standing behind me again, I will burn his entire operation to ash and make him watch. Take him to the warehouse." Hayes and Garrett hauled the man away. Darius turned back to Olivia. She was shaking now, the reality of the violence crashing over her. But she didn't run. She didn't faint. She looked at the blood, looked at the power radiating from Darius, and realized something profound. She didn't want a normal life. A normal life with a boring corporate boss who complained about toner cartridges would suffocate her. She thrived in the chaos. She thrived with him. Darius gently framed her face with his hands. "I'm sorry. I promised you would be safe, and they got too close. I will understand if you want to leave Chicago. I will fund your new identity myself." Olivia reached up, wrapping her hands over his wrists. "If I leave, who is going to fix your scheduling matrix? Who is going to make sure you don't forget your meetings while you're busy running an empire?" Darius's breath hitched. "Olivia, I'm not quitting, Darius," she whispered fiercely. "But I'm not going to be your secretary anymore. If I'm staying in this world, I want a seat at the table, a real one. I want to be your partner." Darius's eyes blazed with a fiery, unyielding devotion. He didn't hesitate. He crushed his mouth against hers, kissing her with a desperate, bruising passion that tasted of danger and absolute surrender. Olivia kissed him back, wrapping her arms around his neck, pulling his solid body flush against her lush curves. "You can have the table, the company, and everything I own," Darius murmured against her lips, his hands sliding down to grip her soft, wide hips. "The apartment building was just the down payment, Miyakara. You own me." Did you love the intense twists and dark romance of Olivia and Darius's story? If you crave more thrilling mafia romances, where curvy, brilliant women outsmart the mob and claim the fiercely protective men who would burn the world down for them, hit that like button right now. Don't forget to share this video with your fellow romance addicts, and subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so you never miss another heart-pounding, steamy story. Leave a comment below telling us what trope you want to hear next.